Welcome to the target stream for Mint Press News. I'm your host, Robert Inlakesh. As always, thank you to everyone for joining us. Iran and the US have traded blows on a large scale not seen in 2 months since the 40-day war. Hezbollah has continued picking off Israeli soldiers with drones, as Trump now claims a deal is ready for the 1,000th time after threatening to invade Iran and to destroy their infrastructure earlier in the day. So today we'll get into all those details, what was hit, what was not, and of course, examine the resistance videos that have emerged since we last saw you on Monday. But before we begin, the target stream is a 100% viewer-funded show. In the last 2 years, we were financially targeted and banned by PayPal, and our fundraisers were taken down by Indiegogo and GoFundMe. They even withheld our funds. So for the next 60 days, we are looking for 300 new members to keep this news show alive. You can join Mint Press on Patreon or here on YouTube and join our membership program. We are up against a Goliath corporate media propaganda machine, so we do need funds for independent people's media to keep the public informed. And just so everyone is aware, we do these live streams every Monday and Thursday, 4 p.m. CST. And we will see you here consistently at those times. So unless you haven't been paying attention, this morning there were a number of statements made by US President Donald Trump. He claimed that he was going to hit Iran harder than they've ever been hit. He also threatened that he was going to take Kharg Island, which is in the north of the Persian Gulf and is, of course, very integral to Iranian oil and gas, their industry. He also said that he was going to take out bridges, so hitting civilian infrastructure, openly threatening this after 2 days of large-scale attacks on the south of Iran. However, recently, in the past few hours, coincides with the World Cup starting, so that's interesting. He announced that a deal has been reached, but that the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz is still being imposed, but eventually that it will be lifted. So it's very interesting because if you have been following this, and it gets a little bit exhausting at times to actually consistently follow this, you'll know that Trump has announced a deal with Iran about 1,000 times, and nothing ever materializes. So this is Axios again, which we've looked at frequently throughout the weeks. Barak Ravid with the scoop. Trump cancels Iran strikes as mediators claim deal is close. So Trump is claiming that the deal is done, and claimed that Iran's leadership has approved a draft agreement. But they go on to basically state the obvious, and that's that nothing really has changed. And now, so the Iranian side, the Iranian government has said that nothing has yet been agreed to. And they've also sort of indicated, and what Axios has indicated, is that there is a memorandum of on principle, they've agreed to a memorandum of understanding in order to pave the way to an agreement. I mean, it's a bit of a headache, this entire process, to be honest. But evidently, Trump backed down on wanting to escalate massively with Iran. I'm not saying the World Cup just starting has anything to do with that necessarily, but the timing is very interesting. And still, those final details have not been hashed out. But we are hearing from different sources, the talks have progressed. In reality, and according to what we have documented, nothing has actually changed since the memorandum of understanding that was proposed about 2 weeks ago, which of course collapsed, and Israel bombed Beirut after Iran's threats. Iran struck back, and we have now the Israeli media have openly admitted that despite the fact that their military said no Iranian missiles hit anything in that wave of attacks on northern occupied Palestine, they've admitted that Ramat David Air Base was struck. Iran, of course, claimed that they hit a sensitive target, and that sensitive target was a HQ for drones and drone technology monitoring and operations. And it appears that that has now been basically confirmed by the Israelis themselves after satellite imagery revealed that to be true, that they did hit that target. So then over the next few days, more developments occurred when the US suddenly, out of nowhere, Trump said that a Apache helicopter was downed by Iran. Now, Iran didn't officially take responsibility for downing the Apache helicopter. There's conflicting reports as to what actually happened, and I don't know where anyone really has to stand on that, can stand on this, because it is very interesting. Normally, if Iran does something like this, it will adopt it, but at the same time, it's always possible that an Iranian drone did down it, but it could have equally went down due to technical issues, or this could simply be the U.S. Coming up with an excuse to attack Iran and targets in the south of Iran. Yesterday, these are the targets that were hit by the United States. They fired over 40 cruise missiles, according to reports. I think it was 46 cruise missiles, another waste of their cruise missile arsenal, which is already dwindling. And of course, the Iranians responded. And now the United States CENTCOM, or as I like to call it, COPCOM, denies that anything ever happens to their troops and their bases. And of course, Bahrain and Kuwait and Jordan, they all like to deny any damage being inflicted as well themselves. So, and in fact, interestingly, a lot of the sirens weren't even sounding in Bahrain and Kuwait properly in many occasions. And I spoke to some sources there, and they confirmed that the apps or the phone notifications weren't coming through. It was stalling. So a lot of people had problems with that, which I believe is deliberate. So what's interesting about Iran's response here is this is Sheikh Issa base in Bahrain. And it's very telling. So this was released by NASA, and this indicates that there were fires that erupted inside this airbase. Now, this airbase was not struck, to my recollection, was not struck during the 40-day war by Iran. But now Iran, in response to US strikes, has decided to focus a lot of firepower, a lot of ballistic missiles on Sheikh Issa base. The reason why, and what this indicates also, is that the United States have moved a lot of assets there because other bases have become difficult to operate in. They've become non-operational. They've lost a lot of equipment. And obviously, as well, it's not safe for their soldiers. You know, they've taken out accommodation places where their soldiers would be housed. So there have been a number of strikes which were recorded there. Again, none of this has been admitted, but CENTCOM or COPCOM hasn't denied the extent of the damage which has been reported. And another interesting thing is, during the 40-day war, they started censoring this satellite imagery and footage coming out. This time around, we've actually seen quite a bit. We've seen quite a bit of evidence of what has been destroyed. And I thought that is interesting, because it indicates that someone wants us to see the extent of the damage which is being done by these Iranian strikes. Now, afterwards, of course, CNN and the Washington Post, New York Times started reporting and revealing, you know, the damage to 16 US bases in the region. But during the war itself, everything was being censored. Even the video footage, it was dwindling. We barely got anything come out, but we are actually seeing the results of the hits. Now, Iran, during its first day of responses, they claim to have taken out 4 hangars in Jordan, in the Sulti Umafawak airbase in Jordan, 4 F-35 hangars. And of course, Jordan denied that any of the missiles got through and just said debris fell, and it because of the falling debris, that's what ultimately. That's the second footage. Okay, so here we have footage which clearly shows that something was hit, that Iran, there were impacts in the base. This is from the first day. Now, this is the strikes that happened last night. This is footage of air defense firing off and missing Iranian missiles. So we'll take a look at this. This is from last night in Iran's ballistic missile response. What I want to note here is that the pace of fire, the extent to which Iran hit back yesterday, at least, and to an extent the day before as well, is almost at par with what we saw at the second half, at the tail end of the 40-day war that just happened, which ended with the temporary ceasefire agreement. And just as I'm speaking right now, there's reports of air defense activity in southern Iran. So I'll follow up on that during the stream, if indeed Iranian air defenses are shooting, trying to intercept incoming US missiles, despite the fact that Trump is claiming there's a deal on the table. So let's take a look at this, because again, keep in mind, Jordan said that everything basically missed or was shot down. And here's some footage. If you can see on screen here, the Iranian missiles are heading down, and there's attempts to intercept them, but the missiles are evading the Jordanian air defenses. And okay, this is another thing while you're watching this. This is not Jordanian air defenses. This is U.S. air defenses, and these are U.S. operators. So when the Jordanians claim something about their magical air defenses, and also this right here, again, from yesterday, or early in the morning, depending upon what time zone you're on, these are columns of smoke rising. So Iran claimed again, so in 2 consecutive days, the first day that it hit 4 hangars for F-35 fighter jets. The second day, they said that they went after hangars containing F-35 fighter jets, F-15s, and F-16s. And that they managed to destroy a number of them. So, of course, we cannot confirm 100% what was destroyed, but this footage does indicate, see, there's that air defense munition there, which self-detonated, Patriot air defense, that self-detonated. And again, I'll cover this for another time. This right here, what you're seeing in the sky, a lot of people release, so you'll see on Telegram and these channels and armchair generals that like to claim that this is an intercepted missile. This does not indicate an intercepted missile. A ballistic missile being intercepted looks rather different, and most of the time, if they manage to get back into the atmosphere, they're normally going to hit their target, or at least the debris is going to fall down and do something. But this does not necessarily indicate that this shot down a missile. And the ones in the far back here, if you see those little plumes of smoke, definitely don't. So these are the munitions themselves, the air defense munitions explode when they don't hit their target. Now, in some cases, they do hit other munitions, and it's not always 100%. But when people just share photos of these plumes of smoke in the sky, it does not necessarily mean that anything was shot down. It simply means that missile had exploded. And that's what they do, because if you think about it, if they just keep going, then they'll fall and maybe they hit a civilian area. Not a very good idea. So they detonate and explode so they don't hit civilian areas. But as you can see in this video, there are those columns of smoke. Just go back a little bit because it's more clear here. So there's columns of smoke. And people reported as well seeing smoke, like dark smoke burning from the base for hours. So that could indicate that they did actually hit those F-35s, F-15s, F-16s. But it could also indicate that they were going after fuel storage and other sites because of the thick black burning smoke. That's what that indicates. At least this is what, when I've consulted with military sources, military analyst sources of mine, that's what they've concluded. And so, again, Jordan tries to cover this up. And during the war, I have many people that I know who are in Jordan, who were there during the 40-day war, and were also there during the 12-day war in June 2025. And they said that the missiles that were coming over, they ended up, because of the air defense going up and intercepting some of them, and some of them hitting nearby. People were being killed, and there were dozens of Jordanians who were dying because of these missiles coming in, and you won't hear anything about that. They started reporting some of them dying, and then if you were to talk about it, you're going to get a black bag over your head. The intelligence in Jordan are going to come and take you. So it's not a good idea to talk about it. Amidst all of this happening, Iran also managed to down an MQ-9, another MQ-9 drone, which, they can be sold for up to $32 million. These are very expensive drones. And Iran has downed 30 of them so far since the beginning of the war. And of course, you're watching this here, and the Iranian interceptor missile takes it down. And so Iran managed to down a drone. If you believe the US account, Iran hasn't denied shooting down the Apache helicopter. It's very weird, all of the details around it. Why weren't the crew even injured? A lot of questions. I know the cockpit, if the back of the helicopter, is struck, the cockpit can protect them. I understand that, but it's a bit weird that they weren't injured. Anyway, regardless, that's that drone being taken down. And again, Iran has shot down more than 30 of them since the start of the war. And the US is running low on its supply of these MQ-9 drones, again, worth over $30 million per unit. So it's a very expensive drone to be to lose. And the United States are consistently losing these drones. So there's that. And then also in Bahrain, to cover this happened last night. So there was an Iranian missile strike which struck Jebel al-Dukhan, which means in Arabic, that means like the mountain of smoke. And as we see, it's lived up to its name. It really has lived up to its name, because there is a radome which was struck there. It's like a long-range radar site, and that does appear to be burning from that site. And so we have photographic evidence of it. And obviously people have geolocated where that's at, and it does match up. So it does look like the Iranians took out a long-range radar, which also could have implications for people in Bahrain who want to tell the weather, because while it does serve as an early warning radar, also it can come to dual use, and they can use it as well for reading the weather. So that could perhaps have some sort of influence on that. So it's important to look at that. And all of this evidence is here. There is, of course, more as well, which I haven't got pulled up here, in the way of satellite imagery, which indicates a number of different strikes. But what we do know is that the US as well, they've claimed, the Iranians have also claimed that they took out a number of different jets that landed in Bahrain yesterday, so that they specifically targeted them after they landed in Sheikh Issa base. Now, for that, there are those heat signatures indicating fires in the area. So Iran could be telling the truth. Some people doubted them initially when they said that they went after 4 F-35 hangars. Obviously, it's not proven that all of these hangars were hit or that they had F-35s in them and that they were destroyed, but they definitely hit it. And I don't think that the United States was prepared for that attack on their base in Jordan, and it hadn't been struck too heavily in the past. Also, another possibility here is in that base in Jordan, where we saw the black smoke come from, the Iranians could have targeted or could have hit air defense sites. And there's some who are arguing that based upon the satellite imagery, that these Patriot air defense batteries could have been struck. But again, we like to go with what we can 100% prove. Definitely hits on these bases. The United States did get hit back pretty hard. And also another development is that for 48 hours straight, Iran has not stopped firing Shahed drones and ballistic missiles into targets affiliated with the Kurdish Iranian opposition. So that's another point also to consider. That all being said, it's important to look at what Iran is actually doing here. So before we get into Hezbollah, what's been happening in Lebanon, because there's been some major developments there, I wanted to look at a concept here, which I think a lot of people have sort of slept on. So there was this concept that emerged years and years back, and even the former commander, the General Qasem Soleimani of the IRGC's Quds forces, promoted this idea, but we heard it more so from the former Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the idea of the unity of the squares, which was in essence the idea that all of the fronts of the Iranian-led axis of resistance would combine their powers together, would fight, and would form a pact where it was almost like an axis of resistance NATO pact, where an attack on one is an attack on all. And so what Iran has done by establishing this deterrence equation with the Israelis, whereby the Israelis are forced to back down from attacking Beirut at this point, and Iranians for the first time intervened on behalf of Lebanon and not after they were struck directly. It wasn't a response to something done to them. Is that the Iranians are setting the equation of renewing the unity of squares. Why is this so incredibly important? Because Israel has bragged repeatedly about how it broke this equation. Immediately after October 7, 2023, Hezbollah intervened and it started firing on the Sheba Farms area, which is occupied Lebanese territory, and going after the Israelis. And it put up a support front in favor of the Gaza Strip. And it fought consistently for Gaza. And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the former Secretary General of Hezbollah, he repeatedly said that his red line was Gaza and that he would fight for Gaza and he would not give up on the Gaza Strip. And again, this was part of making this unity of squares equation come to fruition, to back Gaza up no matter what. And this is actually an excerpt from Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's last speech so that you can understand how he was communicating this. Just so everyone is aware, while I'm playing this here, this speech was delivered after the pager attack, which killed over 20 people and injured thousands and was indiscriminate. And of course, terrorism. Even Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, said that it was terrorism, and inflicted a massive blow. And this is Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And not too long after this, Israel, and according to the Israeli leadership and think tanks, this speech was the speech where they decided to launch the airstrike that assassinated him in the southern suburbs of Beirut. So this is an excerpt from that speech.
نقول لحكومة العدو، لجيش العدو، لمجتمع العدو: جبهة لبنان لن تتوقف قبل وقف العدوان على غزة. على 11 شهر عم نقول هذا الكلام. ممكن هذا كلام متكرر الآن، ولكن هذا الكلام يأتي بعد هاتين الضربتين الكبيرتين، بعد كل هؤلاء الشهداء وكل هذه الجراح وكل هذه الآلام. أنا أقول بوضوح: أيا تكن التضحيات، أيا تكن العواقب، أيا تكن الاحتمالات، أيا يكن الأفق الذي تذهب إليه المنطقة، المقاومة في لبنان لن تتوقف عن دعم ومساندة أهل غزة وأهل الضفة والمظلومين في تلك الأرض المقدسة.
So, having watched that there, this is the reason why people say that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah sacrificed himself for Gaza. because he refused to stop firing on the Israelis. And Israel made the decision then that because he wouldn't back down, that they would assassinate him. And when they assassinated him, they did so by taking out an entire city block, and they killed, and they openly announced that they believed that there would be 300 people killed. They killed around 300 people in order to kill Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the former Secretary General of Hezbollah. And the war that then continued on from there led to the November 27, 2024 ceasefire. And Israel held that ceasefire up and claimed that we achieved our objectives because we broke the unity of squares. We prevented the equation where Hezbollah would continue to fight on the side of Gaza. And of course, Hezbollah was put in a very, very difficult position. It wasn't something that, of course, they went willingly into. And the ceasefire period, Israel would go on to violate it 15,400 times, more than any other ceasefire has ever been violated in recorded human history. But Israel claimed that they had broken the unity of squares and they had divided the resistance front. And a part of this idea of victory, of Israeli victory and some sort of strategic gains, was that they had done this and then the Syrian government had then fell as well afterwards. And so that had broken the supply route to Hezbollah. Now, it turns out that because of the nature of what the new Syrian leadership would come to be, it's so incredibly chaotic that it didn't really make an enormous difference. Now, it does on the quality of certain weapons coming in, but not the quantity. And also a lot of the stockpiles of the former Syrian Arab army were transferred over to Hezbollah. And on this stream, we have covered that, how there is evidence of a lot of the Syrian Arab army's weapons that weren't destroyed by the Israelis on the last day because they went in and wiped out a lot of the strategic reserves of the Syrian state as it fell, that then got transferred in. But again, Israel presented what it had done as this massive victory because it had broken apart the fronts. The Iraqis as well had backed off, mainly to do with domestic issues, because they were providing a support front for Gaza, but it wasn't as effective as Lebanon and obviously Yemen. Yemen played a major role and never backed down throughout the entire course of the genocide in Gaza. But what Iran has just done, and the reason I bring this up, is that Iran has reunited the fronts. It has brought Ansarullah into the equation in a major way, where Ansarullah now, after the global economy has been impacted so heavily by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, now Ansarullah has said, we're closing Bab al-Mandab Strait and the Red Sea. We're reimposing the blockade on the Israelis, and we will impose that blockade on the United States and then the Europeans, and we have an escalation ladder in terms of what we're going to do there. So we're going to apply that pressure. So the Iranians have utilized, they played that card now, and they're beginning to play that card, and they have linked the fronts, and they have said that they will not back down until all the fronts have ceasefires to secure them. So an attack on one is an attack on all. That at least appears to be what Iran is doing. Now, if Iran goes ahead with this, Iran has reestablished the deterrence equation of the unity of fronts within its axis that it heads, and in a way that we haven't seen before. So that was them taking that massive step of striking the Israelis in response to an attack on Beirut. That's what that was. And Israel is not exactly happy about this, but there's little that they can do. And there's little that they can do because they are really taking a beating inside of Lebanon. And we'll take a look at that. This is a clip of Trump speaking about his deal. And even, in the White House, American journalists are questioning his deal. But we might as well play this and look at this before we get into the next phase, looking at what's been happening on the ground in Lebanon.
For that Iran and the United States were close to a deal. It has not happened yet. Why are you so convinced that this time is different?
Because they've taken a pounding. They've taken a pounding like very few people could take, and they want to make the deal a lot more than I do. And we could have had it done the other way, I guess, but it would have taken longer. They got hit very hard recently, as you know, and I don't like to have to do things that way, but I felt it was necessary. It's a great deal for the United States and for the Middle East, and I think ultimately great for Iran because they'll be able to build up their country and other country. I really believe it's a regime change because I find these people to be much more rational than the people that are no longer with us. We knocked out the first.
So again, he's claiming that there's a regime change and that they've knocked out the Iranian government, which again, like, it's just demonstrably untrue. And he's claiming that we hit them very hard. And it's like, well, the United States got hit back pretty hard too, and you didn't change anything. And you're not going to impact Iran militarily any more than you did in that 40-day period where you hit them much harder than you have in the past 2 days. Nothing really changes. And if you want an indication of where things are at, really, simply, and people forget that this even happened, but when the Trump administration came into power and he was requested by the Israelis to attack Yemen, Trump attacked Yemen and launched a bombing campaign for over a month, which cost billions of dollars in US taxpayer dollars. And he used the B-2s and cruise missiles, everything you can think of, and didn't hit jack, nothing, didn't get anything. So Yemen was fine, didn't take out the missile bases in Yemen, didn't impact Yemen in a way. And Yemen is much weaker militarily than Iran is. So, you know, if you look at what they did to Yemen, they didn't really pull off much, and they haven't pulled off anything here. And also, they couldn't open Bab el-Mandeb when and clear the Red Sea when fighting against Yemen, let alone open the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's ridiculous. But that being said, just before we get into the next phase of this live stream and what has been happening inside Lebanon, this is just a reminder that the target stream is 100% viewer funded. As a show, in the last 2 years, we were financially targeted and banned by PayPal, and our fundraisers were taken down by Indiegogo and GoFundMe. They even withheld our funds. So for the next 60 days, we are looking for 300 new members to keep this news show alive. And you can join Mint Press on Patreon or right here on YouTube and join our membership program. So that being said, let's get into what's been happening in Lebanon, starting with what happened earlier today. So this is footage, and Hezbollah announced it formally. This is footage that was recorded of the downing of a Heron 1 drone by Hezbollah. So this is a much more sophisticated drone than others that Hezbollah has downed. So in the past, Hezbollah has downed a large number of the Hermes 450 drones, and they're like $2 million per unit. And they downed about 10 of them since the beginning of the war, when Hezbollah got involved on March 2nd earlier this year. But now the Heron 1 drone that they've downed, it costs per unit for the Israelis anyway, about 10 million. But it's actually worse than this, that Hezbollah took this down with man-pads, because that's their air defenses, these shoulder-fired missile systems that they have for air defense. It's very bad. It's a bad look for the Israelis, because they like to market this technology around the world. And although it's $10 million per unit for the Israelis to produce these drones, it was about 500 million per unit for India to acquire these drones initially. So, you know, it's a big hit to their the prestige of this drone, that you can't shoot it down. It's impossible to shoot it down, right? It's not easily going to be taken down. It's very sophisticated, and Hezbollah shot it down with man-pads. So it is an embarrassment to the Israelis, a massive embarrassment to the Israelis at that. that being said, there have been a number of operations that have taken place. And so we're going to take a look at them here. So this, again, for those who've been following the streams here, the Israelis entered, I'll pull this up actually before. So again, we can look at where this is on a map, just so everyone is aware. Israel, when taking the area, which is called Beaufort Castle, they bragged a lot about it, and they talked about how they crossed the Litani River. They were very, proud of themselves for doing this, and they entered this area. So they're like, we crossed the Litani River, which is down here. 1 second. So the Litani River runs down here. So normally when the Israelis were talking about taking the Litani River, it meant that they had, actually reached the Litani River from, one of these points. They've come from Naqoura or something, gone down the coast and reached, like they did in 2006, in about 30 days, but months and months and months, and they have failed to go very far in Lebanon at all. Instead, what's happened is they've crossed the Litani River, a few miles away from the border of occupied Palestine, and they've entered this area. And so this is where you're seeing all of this drone footage come from. And the reason why there's so much footage is because it's so open, it's so vulnerable. The Israeli forces are so vulnerable to attacks in this area. So, for this little symbolic victory, they've suffered quite a bit. And we're going to see that theme in the videos we're going to look at today. Just as a disclaimer, like we always do here, this is not an endorsement of this footage. This is for the viewers' personal information and educational purposes. And so we'll take a look at these here. All of these as well have emerged, been released by Hezbollah since Monday when we did our last stream. So these are all relatively new videos. And they're coming out again on a daily basis, and we're watching as these operators that are evidently becoming more sophisticated. This is a logistical vehicle that was taken out by Hezbollah, that drone. And reports from the area said that they saw something burning as a result of this. So this was a direct hit. It didn't look like it survived. Another thing is that that Hezbollah, with these FPV drones, we'll talk about the FPV drones and the developments in Lebanon when it comes to that in a moment. But these FPV drones, what they're doing now is the explosive charges that they're attaching to them and the warheads, they're adding on attachments that make them more sensitive. So, for example, the Israelis are using fishing nets to try and catch the drones as they're coming in. So they're making them more sensitive, so they'll definitely detonate, just in case one of them does run into, something that does catch it. It's still very likely going to detonate. Again, here, attacking the weak part of an Israeli Merkava tank. And this is footage from that Belat military site that was set up. And these are the sites that Israel has been building, and that the Lebanese government did absolutely nothing about for 15 months, as they were literally constructing military bases on their territory, doing absolutely nothing to combat this. But here, again, the Israelis, with all their sophisticated equipment, and this drone just easily flies around the base like it's nothing. And, they can do reconnaissance, or, like is in the case of this video, take out an enemy target. And like we're seeing that the drone, it gets very low here. You see how low it gets. And you see that the operators here are getting more sophisticated. And see, this operator has spotted that the netting there had been placed underneath. And the hatch of that tank appears, it looks like it's open. But again, the operators who are getting more proficient with the usage of these drones are, of course, picking up on different things like the netting, and they've found how to operate these drones in a way where they can circumvent the netting. They can get around that. So those are some of them. So those are some of the videos that were published. Also, there have been a number of videos. Yeah, so this is a drone attack, not using the FPV drones. These are another kind of drone that they frequently use and have a large stockpile of these drones and have been using them even in 2024. They use this drone to strike Netanyahu's house. So these drones, even though, again, like these are radar guided and you can technically jam them, still the Israelis have not been able to do that. So, you know, they're not the FPV drones where it's impossible to jam them, nearly impossible to detect them. They can detect them, but at the end of the day, they're not very efficient. This is showing that in Naqoura and other areas that they're targeting Israeli positions with these drones. And a lot of the time we get a lot of FPV drone footage come and not an enormous amount of footage of the other operations, but around the clock, Hezbollah is carrying out operations with these drones and other kinds of munitions as well. They're firing on Israeli soldier positions constantly, making them move, getting them to retreat from military positions that they've established, to the point where Israel has had to withdraw entire divisions of their military. Well, they say entire divisions. I don't believe the whole division was actually ever operating there. I've probably broken up partial parts of those divisions were operating in South Lebanon. But regardless, they've withdrawn a significant number of soldiers from South Lebanon because they're just so vulnerable. And again, this is a rocket attack on Israeli soldier gatherings in South Lebanon. So the Israelis will be operating in whatever area. Hezbollah has spotters in those areas. They're watching them, and Israel says it has full control, right, over the Lebanese territory, which they claim to have completely occupied, full operational control. And then Hezbollah just shells them with rocket fire like this, like you're seeing, throughout the day, and as you're seeing here, throughout the night as well. This is specifically an attack on Hadatha. So the Israelis, I'll pull this up here, because this is important to look at where exactly this is happening, so you can see on the map where this is actually happening. We've got Hadatha here. Yeah. So Hadatha is actually, deeper into Lebanese territory than the other operations that we've been seeing targeting around. There was one in Naqoura over here, right? And it's beyond Bint Jbeil. And the Israelis have attempted a number of times to advance onto Hadatha, and they have failed. And the reason why they're failing is, again, Hezbollah are engaging in clashes from zero distance with them. They're taking them out with, sniper fire. There's footage which we've looked at as well from Hezbollah's operations where they've actively engaged the Israelis, and they're head on. They're right there. They're right next to them. And the Israelis, again, the way they fight is they like to hide inside their armored personnel carriers and their tanks, and they don't like to come out of their tanks because they're cowards, quite frankly. They don't like to. They won't ever fight, like actually fight. They'll never engage in like a firefight with Hezbollah or anything like that. They don't have the courage to do that because, again, they're a participation trophy army. And you become a general at like 18 years old. But these are the sort of attacks that the Israelis are subjected to round the clock. And it forces them to have to consistently be on the move. They have to think about, not taking the same roads that they would usually take, because Hezbollah, again, will monitor them. They have spotters there on the ground watching them. Their fighters are there, and they feed this information to these rocket units. And then here you go. They're getting shelled, and they have to fall back. They have to halt their advances. They're having rockets fired at them. They're having mortars fired at them. Anti-tank guided missiles hitting their tanks and burning their tanks. and they have to consistently withdraw. And now Hezbollah as well, as we've seen over the past weeks, has acquired night vision for the FPV drones. So they use the FPV drones at night as well to target Israeli soldier gatherings and to target their vehicles. And it's just constant fire. And this is what the Israelis are subjected to. And, you know, there's an enormous focus, like I said, on the FPV drones, but not a lot on everything else. And again, this has been a target. So Hezbollah called this this is a, zoom up here. So this is them firing a ballistic missile, and they called it a qualitative missile. That's what they named it in their video, in their release. So they don't actually give its name specifically, but they fired this onto Beaufort Castle area where the Israeli forces were stationed. So again, Hezbollah spotters detected that the troops had a gathering at night. They've now used a ballistic missile, a guided missile, to target the Israelis and Israeli soldier gathering. And this is all like fire not on the settlements. This is fire on Israeli soldier positions. And of course, this thing carries a much larger warhead than, you know, hitting them with rockets. And obviously it travels a longer distance and is more accurate. And Hezbollah has also used cruise missiles as well to target the Israelis, Israeli soldier gatherings. And it has many more different kinds of munitions that it has in its arsenal, which is ready to use against the Israelis. That being said, perhaps the most embarrassing thing to have happened to the Israelis happened the other day. And there was a fighter, which Israel originally claimed that he was a member of Hezbollah, and that Hezbollah had officially invaded the Galilee in the Galilee Panhandle area. So, around here, I believe it was, some reports said here in Margaliot settlement, and others said Metula. So there were conflicting reports about where these, and if there was a second person that also came across. But regardless, Israel had reported that Hezbollah had crossed the border officially, which we'll get into how much of an embarrassment that is to them. But it wasn't Hezbollah that crossed the border, and apparently it was only one guy that did it. And this guy, his name is Hamza Hamoud, and he apparently told his parents that he was going to go and do this operation. And he got on his bike and he headed over and crossed the border. He managed to bypass all of Israel's surveillance equipment, managed to get around Israeli military sites, evade them, and then engage in a direct clash with the Israeli military until he was killed. Now, Israel, there were initially reports in the Hebrew media that some Israeli soldiers were injured in that clash. And then the Israeli military itself said that there were no injuries and that they just killed this resistance fighter who decided to go and do this by himself. And, you know, again, this is something that is a massive embarrassment because the Israelis claim to control this entire security zone in South Lebanon. And yet a guy who is not even, and there's no proof he has formal military training with any of these resistance groups. So he's not trained to penetrate the Lebanese border and go through into occupied Palestine. That's not what he doesn't have training to do this. You know, he doesn't have any special equipment. He just armed himself with a Kalashnikov, went over the border and started opening fire on the Israeli soldiers. And these are the sort of acts that happened in South Lebanon, which led to Israel fleeing the country entirely and abandoning its occupation in the year 2000, because everyone in Lebanon, in the south of Lebanon, particularly, were willing to fight the Israelis, or were so incredibly opposed to them that you would have people from that population that would go and give their life to pull off an operation of this nature. And it just demonstrates that the Israelis have absolutely no control, none whatsoever. Them claiming to have dealt these blows to Hezbollah. You know, a week ago, Netanyahu was claiming to have killed like in the high hundreds of Hezbollah fighters. I saw a recent speech of his. He claimed to kill 10,000. Just ridiculous cope numbers, honestly. The most ridiculous numbers I've ever seen. Because if they had killed 10,000, if they had killed even 1,000 Hezbollah fighters, you would see some evidence of this. And the reality is there is no evidence. There's evidence of 3,500 people being killed, the vast majority of them civilians. And there's basically no battle. Where's the battle footage? Where's all this footage of Hezbollah fighters being killed and hunted down, and your strong Israeli military with your 19-year-old generals? Sorry, your 18-year-old sergeants. And your participation trophy army. Where's the footage? Where's the evidence? You know, picture it didn't happen. Because like, even believing that they killed in the high hundreds is questionable, to be honest with you. But regardless of how many they actually got of Hezbollah, I mean, they couldn't confront Hamza Hammoud independently, got across the border. What do you think Hezbollah could do to them? Realistically speaking, they've drawn them in. There's a reason why they don't go across the border, and they evidently could. They evidently could. But there's a reason why they're not doing that. They want to drag them into Lebanon. They want to make them bleed, and they want to expel them because they have, you know, it's a strategy that they're implementing, Hezbollah, against the Israelis, and this pathetic military which they have. And if they had to fight face to face, they would collapse within a day. You know, but they hide behind their technology. And ultimately, you cannot defeat a guerrilla group that is, you know, rooted in the mountains and has tunnels underneath you, and its fighters are there in ghillie suits in their land, you know, spotting and monitoring your movements so that other fighters can come in and plant IEDs or hit you with rocket fire and fire off these FPV drones at you. I mean, the Israelis are obviously, this is the way to make them suffer the most, you know. Going over into the Galilee for Hezbollah, although it's obvious it's possible, this would mean that Israel would just go ballistic and do the Gaza doctrine on Lebanon. And so evidently their strategy is to make the Israelis bleed and drag them into Lebanese territory and make them fight a war of attrition. And now, if Trump wants to achieve a deal with the Iranians, he has to include a withdrawal from southern Lebanon, or else there is no deal. And Hezbollah is not going to stop firing because, you know, Joseph Aoun, you know, decides to talk some crap. Talking about that, before we get into the next video, the Lebanese government, it decided to ban fiber optic cables from coming into the country, which of course are needed for civilian use as well, because Israel demanded, their Israeli masters demanded that the little puny, pathetic Lebanese government, which doesn't stand for its people at all, evidently, that it punish its civilian population even in order to stop fiber optic cables from coming in because they're used in FPV drones. Now, Hezbollah is not going to get them in this way, right? So this is not going to affect Hezbollah. This is going to affect your own people and fiber optic cables in your country. Ridiculously stupid policy to adopt. But again, you know, daddy US and mommy Israel tell you have to do something, then little Joseph has to sit down and play ball, and so does Nawaf Salam. And so they banned fiber optic cables, which will mean absolutely nothing. Will not affect the Hezbollah and its ability to produce FPV drones. It's just, you can't destroy that supply line. It's so easy to build these drones that anyone could do it. That's why it's so effective. If it was that easy of taking them out, then that would be the solution, and it's done. But that's not how it works. It's not how it works. But that's what the Lebanese, so-called the Lebanese government, the U.S. proxies in Beirut, they've decided to do in order to stop the FPV drones. As their country is bombarded, entire towns are blown to pieces, medics are targeted, the Lebanese army, they kill a general in the Lebanese army and all of that. They're going after fiber optic cables, which won't actually impact Hezbollah and them producing FPV drones. It's just going to impact your own population, if anything, right? But whatever your masters say, bow to your masters. Good boy. Good boy. Do what you're told. That's basically what it is, unfortunately, because it's not going to affect it. And, some people ask, well, why view them with such contempt? Because, look, at the end of the day, these puppets of the United States and the Israelis are not respected by the Israelis or the US at all. They don't respect them. They don't respect them. They respect people that they kill more. They respect the Israelis. If you look at the way that they talk about someone like Hamad Adif, the former head of the Qassam brigades of Hamas, you look at the way that they talk about him in the Israeli think tanks. They're quite honest about what he did. And so there's more respect to someone like that, the former commander-in-chief of Hamas's Qassam brigades, than there is for someone like Mahmoud Abbas, for instance, if we're comparing to the Palestinian side. But in this case, it's 10 times worse, right? 10 times worse, because this Lebanese government doesn't stand for anything. It has, at least there's just no red lines whatsoever. But the Palestinian Authority, will get its people to go to the United Nations. It has ambassadors around the world that might actually stand up and say something occasionally. This here is like the ultimate puppet that is just has no dignity at all, that has no self-respect. And they don't respect that. They don't respect people who do that. Now, you will be their enemy if you go against them, and they do hate you, but they have this weird sense of respect for their enemies. Like Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, they listen to every speech he said that he gave. And if you see how they talk about him honestly, not when they're doing their propaganda nonsense, and they break down what he was, how important he was, they do largely give him his props. And the same for others that they have to actually compete with. But when they speak internally about these people, they don't have any respect for them. So that's why I don't believe in, sugarcoating things and talking about, these leaders after they do things to their own people like this, as if they're serious, because they're not serious. They're really not serious. That being said, here's something that's a bit more serious, which came out today. So this is in Khiyam, in the south of Lebanon, closer to the Syrian Golan Heights. The Golan is like right next to Khiyam, basically. And so here's the Hezbollah FPV drone, and they are going to directly target Israeli soldiers. And you'll see in the video here that they're fleeing. And again, this is super embarrassing to the Israelis, super embarrassing. You'll see the Israelis realize at the last moment that the drone is coming, and you see him fleeing, and it literally goes right into his backside. So that drone hits right there. And we can imagine, obviously, what happened after the camera cut off. So that is the latest video that Hezbollah actually released, the latest footage we have. Earlier in the show, I did say there were claims that of air defense fire, and apparently there have been explosions that have happened. Okay, so there's been in Iran, as we've been on this live stream, there's air defense fire in a number of different places. Iran apparently launched projectiles at vessels attempting to illegally transit the Strait of Hormuz. An American F-35 apparently squawked 7700 emergency code in the UAE and landed, emergency landed. And then there were 2 explosions that just happened in Bandar Abbas. So those are the updates for now, despite the fact that Trump said a deal is done and everything is okay. So apparently there are explosions in southern Iran ongoing, and I'm sure Iran will end up responding to these attacks, and we'll see how they do actually develop over time. And like we covered earlier in the stream, the US might not admit, but CENTCOM doesn't actually appear to be denying a lot of the losses that they're suffering on their military bases. And I will take their silence as not confirmation, but a strong indication that they have sustained damage. Just to remind everyone, as these explosions are occurring in the south of Iran, Iran is firing on, Trump claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open, and he's canceled his strikes as he claims that the deal is close. He's closing in on the deal. And he says the deal is actually done, right? It's all approved by the Iranian leadership, which have rejected this idea that they have actually indeed agreed to it. We've heard, claims from Iranian officials in the last hours that Trump is again negotiating with himself. And I mean, I'm more inclined to believe that than I am the claims of Donald Trump, who in the morning makes his Truth Social post about how he's going to invade Iran and control their oil fields, and it's going to be like Venezuela, and he's going to bomb all the bridges, to suddenly a few hours later, we've done the deal and there's been a regime change. So I trust the Iranian officials more, quite frankly, because they have a better record when it comes to telling the truth. Not that anyone knows 100% what's happening these days in terms of these talks, but what I would mention here and I would say about these negotiations is, unless anything is implemented on the ground, as we're seeing right now, there's explosions in southern Iran. Unless anything is implemented on the ground, we should just work on the assumption that nothing has been settled and the war is effectively still on. So we'll see how things do develop. And we will, of course, be back next week. If you did make it this far in the live stream, by the way, everybody, please hit that like button. Please do drop comments below. Share this video out. Help us in the algorithms there. And of course, as well, for the next 60 days, we're looking for 300 new members to keep the show alive, to keep it going on air. So you can join Mint Press on Patreon or right here on YouTube and join our membership program. And yes, we will be back on Monday. So thank you to everyone for being here today. We'll continue to monitor the developments. If you want to see the live updates, we will have those updates published on our Telegram and our X, also on other platforms. We'll have our live coverage there to make sure everyone is informed about what's going on, how things are escalating, and we'll continue to give our analysis and break down what is going on. And we will see you on Monday, same time, 4 p.m. CST. Till next time.